20F, after notifying the chair of the public body, any person may make a video or audio recording of an open session of a public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. At the beginning of the meeting, the chair shall inform other attendees of any such recordings. This meeting is being recorded by the town. Madonna Mager is also recording this. The listing of agenda items are those reasonably anticipated by the chair, which may be discussed at the meeting. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by law. We have right now 40 participants, including select board and staff. And we'll start off with the town manager's report. Mark?
Thanks, Steve. First on my list is Houstonic Water Works. Again, we've committed to updating the public at every meeting. I don't have a lot to share tonight, but we've reached out to 3 firms soliciting proposals for a phase 2 study of the Houstonic Water Works system, as well as an appraisal of the existing business. We'll be reviewing those proposals as they arrive over the coming weeks and months, and we'll be reporting progress back to the board along the way. I also wanted to mention that we'll be covering this topic again at our next meeting on September 21st. Sean Van Dusen will be in for that meeting to update the board on town-wide infrastructure issues. So that's all I have on this topic.
May I ask a quick question on that? And maybe this is an update for the 21st, but I know that and I apologize, I don't remember the dates, but I know that the DEP issued some work that the Housatonic Water has to do by a certain date. Can we get maybe an update about, maybe Sean can do this or you can do it next week, but if, I can't remember what the date was, but if that work's being done, if they've submitted what they need to submit, those kind of things.
Sure. We can go to that the next meeting.
Can I ask, unless anyone else on the board objects, for Mark, for you to come back to us with a letter to the governor, asking if there's anything he can do. You know, the water is too foul looking to drink, too discolored to do laundry with, but apparently that's, the DEP doesn't have the authority to deal with that. Just if, you know, Smitty is being helpful, everybody's being helpful, but if anyone else, if he has any ideas.
Sure. We can do that.
If you could bring that back for the whole board to nod on. Thank you.
Yeah, and I
Thanks,
agree.
Mark.
Someone who can say it's not an aesthetic issue.
Right.
Will do. Next item up on my list here is the police department update for the Comfort Dog, and I believe Chief Walsh is on the line to speak on behalf of the police department tonight.
Just unmute yourself, Chief.
Okay, how's that?
Perfect.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask Sergeant Story to make a few comments. It was Sergeant Story who, along with Officer Balestro, put this program together for us. It's off to great reviews, and I have to ask Sergeant Story to make a few comments.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, I just want to thank everybody. It's almost been 2 months since we actually kicked off this program, and I just thought it was important at this point to maybe just give the board a little update on where we're at and how things have been going. It's really taken off, probably more popular than we had expected. So far to date, we've received 66 donations from individual citizens and businesses throughout our community. As far as social media, we've gained 800 followers on Instagram and almost 90 followers on Facebook currently. And what we decided to do to kind of keep the community informed on what the program is doing and so they can see what's happening. I invite everybody to go to our website and go to our portal. And on our portal, we're listing all the activity of the dog. So people have, instant access, and they can see where the dog's been deployed or what type of situations we're using the dog for. Officer Blester was doing a fabulous job. He's really vested in the program, and it's exciting to watch him and the dog work together. Him and the dog are currently in the first stage of the training process, which is the puppy training, and I think they're getting ready to start their 4th week of that training. And then there's other stages after that, but so far, Pico has been doing a great job, and Chris as the handler has been doing excellent. As we had promised the town to have zero financial impact, we continue with that pledge. And one of the big issues that came up was utilizing one of the vehicles that we were going to trade in, and we took the current trade-in value from an estimate, a quote that we got when we were pricing out one of the new cars, and we have since reimbursed the town the full amount for that vehicle. And everything to date has been either paid for or supplemented through our donations and from the citizens and the businesses. So this is kind of a quick update. I'm really super impressed with the support we've gotten from everybody, and I think everybody that have come in contact with or involved with over the last several months make a comment about it, how excited they are about it, and in support of the program. So that's all I had. It's kind of quick update. If you have any questions, I'll be willing to try to answer them.
Any questions?
Yeah, I mean, just really quickly, I know in the town budget, we voted for 2 vehicles. One was supposed to be a new K9 unit, and that's for Titan. And then I believe one of the line items in supplies was to outfit that new vehicle for all of the K9 units. So it would be a full K9 unit fit or a retrofit of a new vehicle.
Yes.
So, and then was to also replace an existing vehicle that needed to be replaced. So there was 2 new vehicles, a new K9 unit. So the old K9 unit was the plan was to trade that one in, or can those? Is the K, I don't know what you call it, but the stuff that you put in the vehicle to make it a K9 unit, can that be used? Is that being used for Rico? Is it Pico or Pico? Rico, sorry.
Pico, B-E-K-O.
Pico with a P. Great.
No, with a B as in Bravo.
Sorry.
He is in Bravo.
Bravo,
Pico.
Echo, Kilo, Ocean. Pico.
I'll get there eventually. I don't even remember my kids' names today. I guess I'm just curious about transferring the equipment for those vehicles.
Well, what ends up happening, and I think probably Sergeant Carlock probably answered this question better because I do not handle the vehicles, but the vehicle for, from my understanding, the vehicle for Titan, Officer Ulrich's vehicle, its service life had ended. That equipment that he uses, the cage, and there's a couple other like miscellaneous like cooling fan and alarms that go on in case the dog's in the car and Officer Ulrich is out of the car, it alarms him that there's an issue with the cooling system. The cage is the primary thing, and that cage is not compatible with the new vehicle. So we cannot recycle it. However, that cage could be repurposed. Instead of throwing it away, not really having a purpose for it, we could use it for, it will fit for the older car that we have for Pico. However, Beco is a totally different type of dog than Titan, and a cage is not necessarily, it's not needed. So we don't really even need that cage. It's not needed. The only item that we may repurpose from Tim's older car maybe would be the cooling alarm, and that may be it. Beco could actually probably ride in the front seat. We don't need a separate kennel or anything, any special equipment for him like we do for Titan.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think all of us, or I guess I shouldn't speak for all of us, but I have to say that I was a little confused about how all of the finances of it and, supporting the new vehicle for Titan, and then realizing that it felt like we were kind of getting a vehicle for Beco, kind of caught me off guard. So I do appreciate you guys taking the time to come this evening and try to
Sure. And I think to try to
straighten
clarify
that all
that.
out, to clarify, because I think that's going to be really necessary, that clarification next year when you guys ask for 2 vehicles again, because I think if it wasn't clear, I think people might not, maybe less likely to interpret that when we come back to budget season again next year. So
Sure.
I'm
Yeah,
glad that you guys are
absolutely
taking
understand
the time.
Glad you I totally understand what you're saying. Just try to imagine this: those 2 programs are separately. And when I was working on the Comfort Dog program, the cruiser rotation and what we purchase and don't purchase didn't fall into my thing, because I was thinking on best efforts, we were going to take an old vehicle and maybe repurpose it. And the value of that would be very minimal, and that hopefully we could offset it with donations, in which we have. So they're actually 2 separate type things. And I understand it's because they're dogs, and they're 2 separate dog programs, and they really don't, they're not parallel to each other. So I think it can be confusing for people to understand, just because the word dog is associated with both of them, that they're the same, and they couldn't be further from the same. They're so far apart. 2 totally different programs, 2 totally different needs, 2 totally different training aspects. So I think that's probably some of the confusion.
Right. Yeah, I think they're just, thank you.
Officer Storti, I just had one question.
Sure.
For those residents that might be not on social media and maybe not checking the website, will Beco be on the foot patrol with any officers? Because it would be great to see Beco in town walking with another, with one of the officers, or making a guest appearance at the special town meeting, for example, just being out and about in addition to planned visits.
Absolutely. Yes, that's part of the program, is to integrate into the downtown patrol. And again, if you go to our website and go to our portal, we've listed starting August 11th. It was when we kicked it off, as far as putting Beco kind of in service, and you can see all the activity that he's done, and we're going to continue to do that throughout the program, so people can see where he's going, what he's doing. He is going to be part of the downtown patrol. That's one of the big things, to be out there and try to engage the community with the police department. Our whole goal is to try to bridge that gap between the police department and the community, to bring us together. And I think Beco is the perfect catalyst for that. So that's one of the main things he's going to be doing.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Chief Walsh.
I just wanted to add that today's Western Mass News app, there's an article about Amherst getting their dog, and there aren't too many out there at Western Mass. So we're one of them. And again, there's an article today about Amherst. Just pick one up.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay,
Well, thank you, everybody.
thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, Next up on town manager's report is the June, July, August warrant summaries. In your packet on Friday, you received all three of those summaries. This again makes good on a promise to bring this information forward to the full board and the public on a regular basis. And if anyone has any specific questions, I'll either try to answer them or I can find an answer and report back to you. No? Okay. Next up on my list is the downtown parking and public bathrooms topics. Briefly, I just, I'm happy to report that we're making some progress on two issues that we've been discussing as a community for several years now. Of course, public parking and public restrooms. So those plans include the potential for purchasing and developing a parking lot in downtown Great Barrington and the construction of public restrooms also in the downtown area here. So, of course, we'll need the approval of voters and an appropriation at town meeting, but I hope to share some more information with the board and the public very soon. But two exciting initiatives that are that we're making some progress on. And the last item that I have on my list for tonight is transportation, elderly and disabled transportation specifically. In your packet again for tonight, I included an executive summary as well as a proposed drug and alcohol policy for drivers. And rather than reading the entire executive summary, since it was in the public packet, in short, the Southern Berkshire Elderly Transportation Corporation, SBETC, closed abruptly back in March due to COVID-19 and the pandemic. They reopened in June and then advised us in early September that they would close permanently on September 30th. So that leaves us in a bind. So I'd like to ask the board at this time, and my recommendation I'll read in just a second, but I'd like to ask the board to allow me the flexibility and the authority to work with my staff to get some form of transportation in place in time for October 1st. We've been reaching out to BRTA for assistance, to Representative Pignatelli for assistance, and I'm confident that we can have some wheels on the ground on October 1st. It won't be a perfect system, but we'll have something in place and be able to expand on those services and improve those services at a later date. So I'll just read my recommendation. Did you all have an opportunity to read the drug and alcohol policy? Okay.
Yes.
So the staff recommendation is as follows. Staff recommends the select board allow the town manager and staff to develop a program that will immediately address our transportation needs and come back to the board with regular updates and a long-term plan and operating budget. Staff further recommends the select board approve the drug and alcohol policy for van drivers included in your packet.
We need a motion on the first part or just a nod of our heads?
No, let's take a motion on everything just to formalize it.
Okay, so two separate motions?
Yeah, please.
Right, a motion to endorse the town manager's suggestion that he come back to us with a proposal for elderly transportation for Great Barrington.
I'll second.
So motion by Ed, a second by Bill. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote. All votes tonight are roll call. Lee?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
And I, it's unanimous.
And then
Thank you.
Motion to approve the drug and alcohol policy for van drivers.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, Lee?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
And I, unanimous.
Thank you all.
Okay, under new business. I think, Mark, you're probably going to take this also. The SBREPC recertification. Southern Berkshire Regional Emergency Planning Committee.
Actually, this was a request from Chief Walsh, so I would ask.
I'm sorry. Thank you,
No
Chief. You're muted, Chief. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. We have a request from the Southern Berkshire Regional Emergency Planning Committee they're undergoing recertification, and they're looking for, as part of that process, looking for a letter from all 11 towns from their selectmen saying who's designated as their emergency response coordinator. I'm currently in that position. I've held that since I've been emergency management director. It's kind of part and parcel of the same thing. So I'm currently hold that position, and it just needs something in writing from the board saying that I am.
So, is there a motion to authorize Mark to write that letter?
Sure. Second.
Any discussion?
Thank you, Chief.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you. Lee?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
And aye. It's unanimous.
Oh.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
I just thought since Chief is leaving in December, should we add a predecessor to that letter, or
No,
we'll
let's
deal
wait.
with it in December?
We'll deal with it as we go along, I think. Good thought, though. Great Barrington Housing Authority complaint.
So I'll take this one, Steve. Earlier today, I sent a confidential email to the full board that included a complaint from Eileen Mooney, who's, of course, a member of our Great Barrington Housing Authority. And I have a prepared statement to read aloud. The town has received a complaint from Housing Authority Board member Eileen Mooney encompassing allegations of violations of Housing Authority bylaws, the state open meeting law, the state public records law, the state Department of Community and Housing Development guidelines, and failing to keep the board members informed of matters within its jurisdiction. I defer to the select board as to further action on this matter, as it has enumerated rights to do so under GL Chapter 121B, subsection 6.
And thank you. The board's in receipt of Ms. Mooney's complaint. Pursuant to the board's authority under General Laws, Chapter 121B, Section 6, I move that prior to conducting a hearing on the matter, the board delegate the matter to Mr. Prohinsky to conduct an investigation with a report to the board no later than October 5th, 2020.
And I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Lee?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
And aye. It's a unanimous vote. Thank you. And on to the public hearing. So let me go over the ground rules tonight for the public hearing. What I anticipate happening is that we will reopen the public hearing. We'll allow the petitioner to give us any new information or respond to any previous meeting information that was brought up at the last meeting. I'll allow the public to speak, mostly to confine their remarks to new materials that have been presented. At that point, the select board will have a chance to discuss and ask questions. I would at that point like us to close the public hearing and move to hopefully at a meeting, either next one or the one after that, to continue it to. And at that meeting, we start the discussion about how we're going to vote and the findings of fact. When the public does speak tonight, it'll once again still be residents of Great Barrington, Housatonic only, a limit of 3 minutes. I ask you not to repeat yourself or repeat what you said at the last meeting. And if you send an email, you don't have to feel that you have to go over it again. This board is very diligent and we've all read all the emails. I'm very confident in that. So I'll start with the petitioner. Do they have any new information? And I don't know if that's going to be, and Kate is still recused, so she's leaving the discussion. Dennis, I will allow you to speak first if you have anything to say, or Jim.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a few things. One is that I received correspondence from Doug Stewart, who's an aviation safety specialist. I forwarded that to Mr. Rembold over the weekend. So hopefully you will have that at your disposal when you deliberate on this issue.
We did receive that.
Great. The other thing we've got on the line is the manager of the airport, Terry Anderson, that I'd like her to make a brief statement that she requested. And then the third thing before I have Terry speak, just briefly, I think most of the concerns that I've heard from neighbors and from Attorney Hewer, I think they argue actually in favor of issuing this special permit for the simple reason that, as the Massachusetts Appellate Court has stated on numerous occasions, a special permit is appropriate in those instances where a use is either continuing or important for the community, but the nature of the use is such that it should not be allowed by right. In this case, obviously, the use is continuing, ongoing, pre-existing, non-conforming, so it's in existence, and we think the petitioner feels that the special permit is exactly the forum for this use, so that the town can put reasonable conditions on that use. With that, I would ask if somebody could unmute Terry Anderson, and I'm not sure the number that she's calling from, but
She is unmuted.
okay, great. And I'll turn it over to Terry for her statement. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Not well.
Okay, can you hear me now?
When the dog doesn't bark.
Yeah,
we
the
can hear
dogs
you.
are going outside, sorry. Okay, so my name's Terry Anderson. I reside at 15 Wyandotte Street in Housatonic. I was born in Great Barrington and I've lived here my entire life. 2.5 years ago, I left my 40-year career with the same employer in the financial services industry and went to work for the Great Barrington Airport as their office and business manager. This move came with feelings of trepidation and uncertainty, leaving a job after 40 years, but I was ready for a change. The Great Barrington Airport was not unfamiliar to me. After all, I grew up in Great Barrington. My dad used to bring me to watch the planes taking off and landing. But I quickly learned that this little airport is so much more than meets the eye. Families still come to the airport and watch the planes while enjoying a picnic. People wander around and take photos. But what most people don't know is what a valuable resource this airport is to the surrounding area. The airport hosts fundraising efforts for the local Rotary Club, Berkshire South, the Josh Billings, the Waldorf School, just to name a few. Local police and fire departments use the airport for practice drills. The state police and the military use the airport for emergency training. Lifestar and Medevac helicopters use the airport for emergency transport operations. I, for one, can speak from personal experience how important these services are for our local community. My daughter would not be here today if Lifestar services had not been available in her hometown. I could go on, but I really want to speak about the application for a special permit that is before the Select Board. The application is a request to build garages for airplanes that are currently kept outside. That's it. The airport is not expanding. The airport is not building hangars to be used for anything other than airplanes. These hangars have nothing to do with our current maintenance shop operations. They have nothing to do with our flight school operations. We're simply trying to accommodate our customers by offering them indoor storage for their airplanes. These hangars will provide a place out of the sun, the rain, the snow, the hail, the wind, the many weather changes we all experience here in the Berkshires. This is nothing different than a garage for your car. The pilots at Great Barrington and those who come to visit Great Barrington support the local community in many ways. They eat at our restaurants, they shop in our stores, they stay in our hotels. Their children attend the private schools in the area. They visit the theaters and museums. The list goes on and on. The Great Barrington Airport is an important part of our community. We are a small local business trying to survive during these very challenging times. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak, not only as a resident of Great Barrington, but also as an employee of one of the most giving and caring places in our community. Thank you.
Dennis, do you have anything else to add, Dennis?
No, that's all I've got, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so we will now allow brief public comment. Unfortunately, the first one I have on there, I know what type of phone you have, but I don't know who you are. To Samsung. So if you would like to speak, unmute yourself.
Perhaps this is your Samsung. Can you hear me?
Yes. Your name and address, please. I'm sorry.
Alex Johnson, 66 Seekonk Crossroad. As far as I'm concerned, a small nuisance has been tolerated for many years, but there's a threshold when it becomes a larger nuisance, which could be a danger to health, well-being, whatnot. So I'm thinking that if the select board grants a conformity to its present use, that's giving it free rein. And if it remains non-conforming, that there would be some more power of stipulation with the town who we are and you represent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jay Fingeroff. Just unmute yourself now. You should be okay.
I'm trying.
I'm going to move on and I'll get back to you once you can unmute yourself. Okay, Tad Hewer. And I have a question for you. Originally, the agreement was you were going to speak for your clients, and that's why I had given you the time. Your clients both have their hands up right now. So that becomes a problem for me.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. It was more to address what Mr. Egan spoke about in terms of my letter to you. My clients would like to speak generally on their own behalf, so it would be limited to just speaking about what Mr. Egan has just said on a legal matter.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just briefly on those points. He mentioned a letter from a Mr. Stewart, an aviation specialist. I would just point out that none of the neighbors have seen that. We have no idea what it is or what it says. And that seems to be similar to the noise mitigation plan, which is designated the Good Neighbors procedure that Mr. Egan submitted to the board on 2:30 on Friday afternoon. Apparently it was adopted on August 27th. And it's that kind of last minute information drop, which is quite frankly exactly how not to be a good neighbor. Usually we would expect those things to be circulated roughly.
Somehow you got cut off here.
You got muted.
Yeah, go ahead, Ted. I apologize.
I spoke first about the letter from Mr. Stewart. We haven't seen it. Second, the noise mitigation plan, which also was submitted on August 27th, apparently, or was adopted on the 27th, but was not shared with the select board until late Friday afternoon. And therefore, the neighbors also haven't had 2.5 weeks to review it, which is apparently how long it's been in place. And third, I was noting that it's not clear what case law Mr. Egan is citing about pre-existing non-conforming uses being essentially entitled to special permits. A special permit is to be decided on its own merits and not based on what was there before or what might be there in the future. As we pointed out in our supplemental letter, the burden is on the airport to be able to say that it's doing these things and why it's doing these things and why it's entitled to it. Very last point I make, just as to the point of the airport manager who said that this is a request to build garages. I would simply point the board to the plain language of the special permit application. It is a request to permit the existing non-conforming use of the property. It's for an aviation field special permit. That's different from a request for hangars. A grant of a special permit for an aviation field use is the right to intensify your aviation activities, to expand physical facilities, and to add a wide variety of accessory uses that include hangars, but not necessarily limited to hangars. So there seems to be a fundamental disconnect between the airport's written application to the board, which is what's before you tonight, and the statements that the airport has just made that it's much more limited than what is actually requested. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Jay Fingerov, I think you're unmuted now.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My name is James Fingeroth. I reside at 130 Hurlburt Road and have had my home there for over 40 years. I am very concerned as a homeowner and a neighbor of the airport. We have observed and experienced what appears to be a significant increase in activity at the airport over the past couple of years, both in terms of the number of flights, the noise that the flights make, and the route that the flights take. And in fact, I spoke to the airport manager about this subsequent to the last select board meeting. Joe, I think is his name. And he acknowledged that that is an issue and that they are trying to encourage the pilots to make less noise, I guess is the best I can describe in what he said. It was hardly, however, a commitment. To me, it was a tacit acknowledgement that what we are experiencing is in fact what's occurring. I am deeply concerned, we are deeply concerned, that if the airport receives approval for the request it has made, it will certainly not reduce the noise that they are making. It will only open the door to further noise and further annoyance for the neighbors in the immediate vicinity. I also wonder if perhaps there are records that can be obtained, whether it's from the airport or from aviation authorities, the FAA or otherwise, as to the number of takeoffs and landings that the airport has experienced over the past couple of years, and to see whether that has in fact changed and whether our perception of the frequency is correct. But there's no question that what was, as described by an earlier speaker, a small annoyance with a kind of a cute little airport in our neighborhood has now increased significantly and is more than just an annoyance. It's a significant disruption to our enjoyment of our home. And we would urge the select board to take very seriously the effect that this has on the immediate vicinity, and what, in addition, this may open up the airport to being able to do in the future. As I think the immediate past speaker has said, what they are asking for is more than just garages. It would open the door very widely, I believe, to a variety of other kinds of activities and frequency that is not something that I think is in the best interests of the town or the neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Holly Hamer?
Can you hear me, Steve?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Thank you. On the question of the new noise abatement plan from BAE, I did see that, and I felt like I had the weekend to see whether or not it was prompting fewer low-flying planes over my house and my neighbors' houses. And I really couldn't see any change from the first noise abatement plan, which was submitted a couple of months ago, I guess. And that one also didn't seem to make any difference. The plan is good, but the adherence is not. And it just seemed to me that if the owners can't get the pilots to be respectful to neighbors now during their application period, who would believe that their efforts amount to little more than maybe throwing a dog a bone? That's how it feels to me. And it seems like the people who live here, the people of Great Barrington who live here year round, unlike the out-of-state owners and most of the pilots, we're the dog. I don't know if it's where I live particularly or what my expectations were, but I had never complained about noise from the airport. And the reason is that there wasn't much noise. There was very little disturbance, and there was mutual respect when Walt was the owner. But now, in the last few years, and since the ownership changed in, I think, 2008, there's middle of the night helicopter noise, there's improper muffler noise, there's the torturous screaming, bone rattling noise of a large turboprop revving up. There's late night party noise occasionally, and there's hot dogging pilots circling our homes, that kind of noise. So I don't believe that this new last minute noise abatement plan, however sincere, will have any effect on reducing the neighborhood noise disruptions created by Berkshire Aviation. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. Ann Fredericks?
There, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Thank you for letting me speak. When the current owner of the airport inherited it in 2008, this sensitive property was constrained by a number of issues. A designated U.S. Forestry Wildlife Protected Area, a 500-foot setback to the Green River, farmland in 61A, sited on top of the aquifer, the primary source of drinking water for thousands of people, and in a well-established residential neighborhood. And most importantly, it was constrained by its non-conforming zoning status to expand operations on that site. None of these factors held weight with the owners compared to their desire to turn the small hobby airfield into something else. Today, the airport is requesting a special permit for the right to operate without municipal constraint as an airport in a residential neighborhood and insisting, contrary to common sense, that this request does not equate to an expansion. Look at BAE's current website. It has been greatly expanded to include all the options they are offering, multiple types of licensing for pilots, expanded opportunities to rent planes, taking charter requests, adding access to a flight simulator. There is the constant circling overhead, planes cutting corners, more complaints regarding near misses with planes and cars on Seacon Crossroad, more fly-in mechanics with the hazardous chemicals required to service planes, Black Hawk helicopters invited to do nighttime exercises, sometimes flying so low our houses shake. All of these operations and problems are a result of what they've already done, which is to expand. BAE claims that there are 50 plus planes at the airport. If it is true, this is an expansion by multiple times what was there when they arrived in the neighborhood in 2008. This bears no resemblance to Walt Colodze's airfield. The airport has clearly expanded with no consideration for the bylaws, the neighbors, our water, or the select board. The bylaws are in place to protect the citizens and the resources of Great Barrington. The non-local owners and the majority non-local pilots should not take priority to the tax-paying citizens all over Great Barrington. This is not about just the neighbors anymore. People on the hill, people downtown are complaining in the plains as well. So these citizens who are affected by the expansion that has already taken place, let alone what is planned for the future. In closing, I would also note that the decision to grant a special permit will impact people in Egremont, Alford, and communities further afield like Salisbury, where in 2017, one of the BEA teaching planes crashed, totaling the plane and requiring an EPA cleanup. I respectfully ask the select board to note that without permissions, the airport has already expanded and deny the special permit request. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Fasto?
Get the deck loaded.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sound down. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The burden of proof in applying for a special permit is very much on the applicant. The numerous letters and emails sent to the board show that the airport hasn't met its burden on any one of the 6 special permit criteria, either as to the hangars alone or for the designation as an aviation field in general. Personally, I'm concerned about many issues, but out of respect for your time, I'll briefly comment on only 2. First, safety. What are the facts? There have been several crashes in recent years and many near misses, including 3 with cars on Seacon Crossroad within the last month by pilots coming in at an unapproved sharp angle to the runway instead of coming straight onto the runway. Many of the planes are old. They have only handheld radios, which do not always work, making the instant communication required for safety problematic. The flight school has multiplied the number of takeoffs and landing. That's the riskiest part of flying, taking off and landing, many times. BAE has admitted its inability to enforce adherence to required flight paths and other safety procedures. It's teaching planes repeatedly disregard these flight paths to fly directly over nearby homes and at altitudes lower than the 750-foot altitude required when not landing or taking off, 1,700 feet above sea level. That's 1,000 feet above ground level. The proposed location of new hangars right next to the runway would dramatically reduce the margin of error for planes taking off and landing, increasing the risk of really deadly crashes. And of course, as we all know, the runway is short, half the length of Pittsfield, and it lacks the FAA recommended safety areas at both ends. In fact, Seacon Crossroad is the safety area there. So these risks to the residents of Great Barrington exist now, acknowledged. The point is that allowing BAE to increase the number of planes based there, including more flight school planes, by giving them a special permit, will substantially increase these risks. Second point, leaded aviation gas. In a supplementary submission, BAE has stated that 50% of its planes use unleaded gas. The facts show otherwise. On August 6th of this year, Swift Fuels, the only vendor of unleaded gas to the airport, told me that since October 2017, the airport has purchased only 9,000 gallons of unleaded aviation gas at the usage rates of between 10 to 15 gallons per hour, standard for this category of planes. There have been a maximum of only 900 hours of unleaded gas flying time in the past 3 years. This is a minuscule fraction of the tens of thousands of hours flown from the airport during this period, far less than the 50% claimed by the airport. So the airport remains a substantial generator of airborne lead pollution, both at the airport, the Steiner School, and over the homes where its planes fly over. Lastly,
Your time is just about up, so please wrap up.
Okay. I asked the select board to deny BAE's application for a special permit, and I thank the select board for the time and extraordinary diligence it has devoted to this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Darren Gregory?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Sharon Gregory, 32 Hollenbeck Avenue. I find this request very troublesome. I've attended several select board meetings where BAE has requested permission for 12-hour parties, to operate a restaurant, and to expand commercial activities that detract from our master plan. Many airport hobbyists who are not residents of Great Barrington have inundated the Great Barrington Community Board and social media with non-essential flag-waving and intimidating points. I urge the select board to protect our water resources, our residents, and maintain control of BAE for our community. We should not cede control and continue to monitor changes through our special permitting vehicle under the select board. Please deny this request. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, we have one more. Elise Abrams? Just unmute yourself, please. There you go. Yes, we can. You were unmuted.
Elise Abrams, I live at, can you hear me?
Yes.
548 Egremont Road, which is Route 23, corner of 23 and 71. And I've been here since 1981 when I purchased my home from John Moran of Cornwall Academy fame. I've been remiss in addressing this urgent and pressing question of the special permit, but since being quarantined with family that moved in, I was home for 5 months. During that time, it became abundantly clear that the air traffic had increased dramatically with many more flights and many more training hours every day and even more on weekends. I'm not in a butter, but my property is on the direct path of both takeoff and landing, especially at these low altitudes. And depending on the weather, I'm acutely aware of how loud and invasive these planes are. I can hardly carry on a conversation.
Not us.
Go ahead, Elise.
I can't make it stop. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry.
That's okay.
So sorry. I can hardly carry on a conversation, yes, while a plane is approaching, flying overhead, or moving away. And it has become clear that the potential status of the airport as a, quote, aviation field is unquestionably objectionable to both abutters and to nearby property owners. Granting this special permit will also serve to devalue the properties affected by this proximity and lessen desirability at a time of resale. Meanwhile, our real estate taxes increase every year. One other point I wish to make is the argument the BAE is making regarding their contribution to tax revenue, which is laughable. So far, in the past 7 months, Great Barrington has taken in over $1 million in taxes alone from the Theory Dispensary and will receive millions more to the community impact fee. As 2 more dispensaries are set to open, this will increase even more. The $30,000 plus or minus in taxes that the state would, actually the town would be generated on the airport is an inconsequential amount compared to the detrimental impact this airport would make on our town, roads, and precious land. If I have 1 more minute, can I just and I know
you have 1 minute and 30 seconds. Well, give or take.
Bonded. Well, basically, which I said to you, and I know you read it, but it's ironic that my mother was a pilot. She flew up here all the time, and she was really good friends with Walter, and she had her plane serviced here. She had a single-engine Grumman Tiger, and she loved this airport. And the one thing that Walter and she always agreed on was keep it small, keep it safe, keep it private, and don't expand. And it's just, it is ironic. So thank you very much. I appreciate and thank you for your consideration.
Just want to acknowledge that we did not reopen the public hearing. I did not, but that doesn't have any effect. Everything being said tonight is on the record. So just a small misstep on my part since it was on the back of the page and I didn't turn it over. Jonathan Hankin. How about everyone muting themselves so we don't hear comments in the background?
Can you hear me, Steve?
We can.
Okay, I'll be quick. I share my property line and the airport share the middle of the Green River. I just wanted to make one correction to what Ann Frederick said. She referenced a 500-foot setback from the Green River. That went away with the adoption of the Water Quality Protection Overlay District.
No, it didn't. You changed.
No, we're not going to get into a debate here. Thank you.
So that no longer exists. There's a 200-foot river protection, which is statewide, but we don't have a 500-foot setback.
Thank you, Jonathan. Barbara Barak.
Good.
Yeah, just go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yes, hi, I'm at 6 Cornwall Drive. We have 7 houses here. We're under the flight path. I don't want to repeat what's been said before, and I agree with everybody, but I do want to talk about how the airport is communicating. When we start off a meeting and we hear that this is only about hangars, it throws into question what we're getting from the airport. So it puts me in a position of suspicion, and I don't appreciate that. When they say they have an average of 2 planes an hour, it just makes no sense. I sit out at my pool at Cornwall Drive in the summer, and I get 4 very loud planes in a row, and you can't talk. They have a new very large plane that has 4 windows on each side, and and I wasn't even wearing my hearing aid at the pool. So it's just very disruptive. I'm not the only one at Cornwall Drive who's observed this. And so I just feel like we're opening up the door to unregulated new decibel levels and frequencies and pollution without really a lot of oversight on anyone's part as to what's going to be happening in the future. I don't see any plan to check decibel levels, check frequency, check harm to the community. It's just like opening up the barn door and letting the horse out. That's really what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see no other hands raised, so the public comment period is open, although we're not closing the public hearing yet. It's, I'm sorry, whoever's raising their hand, it's too late. We're moving ahead. You had a perfectly good chance to do that. So what next will happen, I'm going to ask Chris Rembold, who's our expert in zoning, to talk a little bit about what the special permit means. I think that's something that's been discussed a lot by opponents and proponents. And Chris, if you want
how they communicate. Can you give them?
Thanks, Steve. Happy to start. I don't know if you want to mute other participants. Okay.
Yes, I just did.
That seems better. I guess the short answer is this. The board in its deliberations will have to clearly state what it feels are the benefits and detriments of the airport and of the proposed hangars. The special permit is requesting an aviation use in a residential zone. It is also requesting, as part of that, it is showing its cards, if you will, to propose the hangars in the location and in the manner shown on the plans. So unless the board were to decide otherwise, granting of the permit as submitted would include the right to build those hangars subject to any other zoning requirements that there might be, specifically site plan review and approval by the planning board for accessory structures. Obviously, that's if the board feels the benefits outweigh the detriments, and you may still have questions, a handful, many questions, depending on what you've heard and from the applicant and from folks for and against. So again, granting would mean that the airport exists legally under zoning and could construct the hangars as proposed. It's also conceivable that the board could grant a permit if it feels there are benefits, and it could put conditions on the hangars if those conditions are based on solid, well-reasoned findings. And the conditions could be whatever the board feels necessary to ensure that the benefits that it finds, that those benefits continue to accrue to the public and that the detriments don't overwhelm those benefits. It's entirely possible that the board puts a very bright line, a very tight box around what the airport can do. So there have been comments made in tonight's hearing and other hearings about a fear of granting a permit would lead to no regulation or oversight. Well, it might be the board's decision to grant a permit with a lot of oversight and regulation. It's entirely in the board's purview to do that. If it feels there are detriments that need to be controlled, it can grant a permit with conditions that control any possible detriments. So there are a number of ways that the board can go. I hope that sort of answers what's being asked for and what the board, what the board's decision might be, or how it might be crafted. Happy to discuss anything else. There are probably a lot of comments that the board has, and maybe even further questions that you have seeking more evidence from either the applicant or abutters for any statements either side have made. So I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you very much, Chris. So board members, questions, comments for either the applicant or for Chris?
I have a question for Chris.
Yes.
Chris, I'm kind of confusing that they're trying to do site plan review and requesting essentially a zoning change for the airport. Is there any way we can unbundle those and deal with them separately?
The applicant has agreed to a number of continuances on the planning board site plan review process. Because the planning board's practice recently has been to not get ahead of a special permit. So I think the planning board will defer to the select board on the special permit. And obviously if a special permit isn't granted, the planning board won't need to act on the hangars as presented. If it is granted, then I'm sure the applicant would want to move forward with the site plan approval. So I think that process can run simultaneously. I don't think it needs to be unbundled. It'll only proceed with the planning board if there's a real reason to do so. I hope that answers your question.
Well, it seems like what they're asking for is just a zoning change on one hand to be an airport.
As I hope I made clear, you could take any direction after your deliberations. And so long as your findings are clear and well-reasoned, you could grant a permit allowing an airport, you could grant a permit allowing an airport without hangars, you could grant a permit allowing, not allowing an airport. There are any number of ways you can go. But you'll have to close the hearing after you have all the evidence in front of you and deliberate at that time.
Okay, thanks.
Ed, Lee?
I have a question. In regards to the hangars, could they have gone or could they go to the ZBA and just request hangars? So take the building permit route rather than go here if it was just about the hangars? Could they go straight to the ZBA?
Is that a question for me, Lee?
Yes.
It's possible that they could, but I'm not making any judgment here about whether or not it would be sort of ripe for the ZBA.
But is that an avenue that they could pursue if it was just about the hangars? Is that something that?
Yes, it is possibly an avenue that they could pursue. I think they probably chose not to pursue that avenue. as I think the application stated, so that they can be recognized use in the zone.
So then that brings me into my second part of question. With an aviation field special permit, what other benefits are they actually getting other than hangars? If they could just go to the ZBA just for hangars, and if that's what this is about, what are they getting in addition to hangars with an aviation field special permit?
Whatever you feel fit to grant or deny. As I stated, I think the board needs to, after it has the information, enter into deliberations. And if there's a reason to deny, then you would deny. If there's a reason to grant with significant conditions and limitations, that is entirely up to you. You have all of the freedom and discretion that you require in order to ensure benefits are received and detriments are controlled.
Just not to interrupt, there are 4 hands up. When I closed public comment, there were no hands up. Public comment is not going to continue. It's now the select board's time to discuss this. Go ahead, Lee or Ed, or I have questions also.
Are you finished, Lee?
I'm finished, yes.
I have a few. I think they're all for the applicant. Last time you came to us, you were looking for a water quality protection overlay district permit, and this time you're not. Just wondering why. What changed? Last time was 3 hangars. This time it's 6. Dennis, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, I would defer and ask that James Scalise, the engineer on the project, weigh in on that.
Can everyone hear me?
We can.
I can't speak to the last application as I wasn't the engineer on it. I would suggest that that section of the bylaw, if I had to make a guess, is fairly complex and maybe was misunderstood. We spent a lot of effort establishing and minimizing the amount of impervious area to avoid crossing that threshold. We thought that by staying below it, it would be deemed less impactful on the environment and hopefully in a positive light. So we worked hard to stay under the threshold, and that's what we did.
The other one, another water quality question. It does say in the application that 9.2.8 of the bylaw says that small quantities of oil are not prohibited, but 9.2.12 says the following uses and activities are permitted only upon the issuance of a special permit by Board of Selectmen. And number 2 under there is those activities that involve the handling of toxic or hazardous materials in quantities greater than those associated with normal household use. Such activities shall require a special permit to prevent contamination of groundwater. Should the airport have a special permit for handling the oil they handle, the other fluid I assume they use in maintenance?
I believe there's another section under the bylaw. I can't quote it to you, but my recollection is that if you have a pre-existing use of handling those materials and you don't increase that use, it's allowed to continue. And I went through that point by point in the original application, and I believe I concluded that there was not a specific special permit required.
Okay, thank you. In the page 2 of your application, number 8, you give us numbers from 2008 that there were 29,810 operations per year, which if you divide by 365 is 82 a day. Then on page 4, it says there are numbers from 2019. It says there are 48 a day.
48 planes parked at the aircraft or at the airfield is, I don't have numbers for 2019 as it relates to takeoffs. So I was trying to equate from 2008, there was a kind of a census of aircraft on the ground. That number was approximately 48 is my recollection. Currently, we're at 48. I think partly COVID related, we were at 52. And I think what I've said all along is that our goal as part of this application was to kind of be consistent with that DOT study, which said over a 20-year period, there'd be less than 1% per year growth, very moderate to low growth.
Okay, then I was confusing operations and planes.
Yeah.
So do you know how many operations there are per year, or on an average day in the summer?
I do not know.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, we can get that information and follow up with the board.
I'm not sure you can if we close the public hearing.
Yeah, we can.
Oh, okay. Then on page 12, on page 2, number 12, it says there's a single paved runway. Is there not a diagonal grass runway, a runway that goes diagonal from that, a grass runway that Ms. Hamer talked about?
There is, but it's not paved, and it would be discontinued use because if the proposal were approved, because the access driveway to the hangars would cross it, which would effectively eliminate the grass airfield.
Okay, thanks. Then there's, we heard one of the abutters talked about your runway safety area or object-free area, which you talk about on page 8. Those are not airport property?
I believe what they were discussing was zones beyond the ends of the paved runway that extend into the adjacent roadway. What I was talking about and what I illustrate on the project plans is areas and heights of structures where tall items are prohibited. And so our hangars are low-rise buildings within certain distances of the center line of the runway. We can't plant trees, along the edges of the runway.
I guess I'm asking about the abutters property on either side of the runway, on the beginning and the end of the runway.
Yeah.
They're also restricted?
I believe I don't know. I didn't investigate beyond. I only investigated in the development area, which was where the hangars are proposed. I looked at setbacks there to make sure that the proposal met all FAA guidelines. I didn't, look at, areas beyond that with which we are proposing to do work.
Okay. I guess I'm wondering, can you be an airport without those clear areas on either side?
Well, it's a safety concern. I can tell you that on the from the center line parallel to the runway, you need those zones are owned by the airport.
No, it's at the end of the runway. If somebody were to build a building there, would it no longer be able to be an airport?
Let me try this. Dennis, is it a requirement to have a runway safety area?
Yes, it is. And I do not know the specifics of that, but we will absolutely get that information and get that to the board as quickly as we can.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve, for helping me get there. I'll do these quickly. I'll only
go ahead. This is important.
You said on page 12, number 2A, there are 12 employees. Are they full-time?
That's my understanding is they're not all full-time. No.
Okay. And then we also talk about new job opportunities will become available. Is there an estimate for the number of full-time equivalents?
I could get you that.
Okay. On page 12, 2C, you say additional customers will boost the economy when they spend their money at the airport and in town. Is there a number to go with that?
Yeah, the number is what I've been saying all along, which is that to be the moderate growth that would continue. So if we have 48 aircraft now, the DOT study suggested that in 2020 you'd have 52 aircraft, and I believe by 2030 you could have as many as 59.
No, I meant, do you have a number as far as the economic impact? Like what is three more?
I did not do an economic study, no.
Is there a plan for a fence or something to stop people from walking or driving from the hangars to the airport, to the office building?
No, there's no obstructions proposed.
On page 9, you talk about a spill prevention plan. Isn't the gas pump available 24 hours? And if so, what's the spill prevention plan when it's unstaffed?
That's actually a detailed document. There's two of them. One is related to stormwater management, and one is related to the fuel tank usage. The tanks, an example for the fuel pumps, which is I think what you're asking, would be that they would be locked, that they would be lit, that they would have mitigation measures, which could be cleanup materials available on site, that there's a call-in number set up for a list of folks that you would call in the event of an emergency, that sort of thing. So it's a safety document.
All right. Thank you. That's all I got.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. I'll put them together just to make it easier. I guess Dennis is probably the best one to answer this. Could you talk about the Black Hawk helicopter, since there's been much discussion about this? And can you also talk about the number of takeoffs and landings?
Yes, my understanding, Mr. Chairman, and I can get additional information for you on this. I'll speak in generalities with respect to the Black Hawk helicopters. BAE, the airport, has made its facility available to the National Guard to conduct exercises and training with respect to the Black Hawks. While it is understandable that noise concerns are real as it relate to those aircraft, the airport, quite frankly, has made the determination that the good of the community with respect to allowing the National Guard to train and use its facility and become familiar with the facility was actually in the best interest of the community at large, notwithstanding noise concerns and complaints. With respect to takeoffs and landings, I do not have that available right now as we speak, but I will get that information to the board. And I would also get additional information for the board with respect to those Blackhawks.
Thank you. So since the applicant is coming back to us with quite a fair amount of information, what we'll do, and Lee, I'll recognize you in a moment, we won't close the public hearing. We'll continue it tonight so that we can have some more back and forth at the next meeting without having closed the public hearing. Lee, go ahead.
So I guess I'm following up on my original question, which I posed to Chris Rembold, but Jim, I'll pose this to you or to the applicant. So if you can just explain what comes with this special permit as opposed to, let's say, just going to the ZBA for hangars. What actually comes with this aviation field special permit? Because I've heard you say that it's just about the hangars.
Yes.
So I'm just wondering, what benefit, what else are you seeking to get with this special permit?
We are seeking absolutely nothing. The simple fact is we came and we met, we had a pre-development meeting with the town. It's an informal meeting with several town officials. We discussed it. It seemed like it was, quote unquote, the cleaner approach, just to take a pre-existing non-conforming use, make it conforming, but be transparent with everything, our master plan, everything we want to do. So it was considered, I don't know how else to say it, but that was the word we used. We went back and thought about it. We discussed it internally. We talked to our lawyer. We all agreed that it was the most upfront and appropriate way to permit this long-standing pre-existing non-conforming use, but not just permitting it as an aviation field, but showing you our master plan at the same time. And there is no hidden agenda. There is no growth. Without expanding the airfield, you're not going to increase the size or noise of the aircraft. It's currently an unregulated use. We're asking you to regulate us. And we're asking to build garages for aircraft. That's it. That's all we're doing.
So following up on that, so there is the avenue of going just as a building permit, correct?
Yeah, let me speak to that, Jim, if you don't mind, through the chair. The avenue, we have the airport's a pre-existing non-conforming use. with pre-existing nonconformities, anytime you expand that nonconformity, and that initial determination is made by the building inspector, who's a zoning enforcement officer. Anytime you expand that pre-existing nonconformity, you've got to apply for a special permit to the planning board. So we've got two options. One is every time we want to expand that pre-existing nonconformity, we can go to the planning board. That's absolutely an option. As Jim stated, when we looked at this whole history of the airport, the neighbors' concerns, and our master plan, we determined that the best route, not just for the airport, quite frankly, but for the community, would be to apply for a special permit. As Mr. Remble accurately states, granting a special permit in and of itself doesn't guarantee any expansion of any use. All it does is say we take a pre-existing non-conforming use and we make it conforming, as Jim and Chris said, and then the select board can add any reasonable conditions it wants to. We just felt like, a lot of the concerns of the neighbors and their attorney speak to granting the permit and putting conditions on it. And just to clarify what Mr. Huer had said, I never intended to make a legal argument that the Massachusetts Appeals Court, held at any time that pre-existing non-conforming uses should be granted a special permit. What I said was this type of use is exactly the type of use, in my opinion, that special permits work well for. It's a use that is either in use or, in this case, important to the community, but not one where it would be by right and the town would want to have conditions. So I apologize for the length of my response, but I just wanted to spell out exactly what our options were and are, and why we chose to apply for a special permit with this board. We just felt from a comprehensive standpoint, from a master planning standpoint, it was the best route to go.
Okay, so then a follow-up in relation to Steve's question about the Blackhawks. Did they approach the airport, or did the airport approach them?
I believe they approached the airport, but I don't know that for sure. I will get that answered for the board as quickly as I can.
And I'd be curious to see if what are we getting in return for that? Because you say that you think it's beneficial for the community. So I'm just wondering if it is a noise issue, what are the actual benefits the town of Great Barrington is receiving from having the Blackhawk helicopter?
Yeah, and I guess my point was not that it was a pecuniary or a benefit other than helping the National Guard, having the National Guard know the airport, the surrounding areas, in the event, that was necessary in a non-training environment. That was my point. But I can get you an answer as to who approached who as to the use by the Blackhawks of the airport.
Thank you.
Sure.
I have a follow-up to Lee's question about why they don't just go directly to the ZBA or the planning board. If your master plan only has the additional hangars, why not just go that way? Why ask, what benefit is there to, what other benefit are you looking for by becoming conforming by the change in zoning?
I mean, the examples that come to mind would be if we had to, repair a front step and wanted to go to the building inspector, do we need a special permit? It was not an effort to make expansion. It was just routine maintenance of the facility and then compliance with their master plan. And, I'd be happy to help list the outline of conditions that would, limit us in every other imaginable way, because that's really all we're trying to do. And it just seemed like the appropriate, clean zoning approach rather than every single time some picayune issue came up that we would have to go to the zoning board. It seemed that we could make a comprehensive approach with a special permit, get everyone to collaborate, and then have a single permit and then live with it. All of us cooperate and put that together. So that was kind of the spirit of what we were doing. That's our benefit. I think it was to kind of go through this process. It's a difficult one. It's a lot of work for everyone. And we thought that if we could go through it once and do it right, that it would be good for all parties.
And I think if I may, Mr. Chairman, I just would say that certainly Jim and I are professionals. We live and work in the community. We're not interested in coming before this board or any other board in any other municipality and making a representation that turns out not to be the case. So I understand people's concerns about, you're opening Pandora's box or the horses out of the barn or any of these other statements. The fact of the matter is, I think Mr. Remble stated that we've got our cards face up. We're asking for the permit subject to conditions, and to Jim's point, we're happy to work with the board and come up with those conditions that the board feels will work for everybody. That's just the only point I wanted to make with this idea that we're trying to get Fox is trying to get into the hen house, so to speak. That's not the intent of this at all.
Thank you, Dennis. Lee?
So, in relation to conditions, I'm assuming that if there are conditions, if the special permit is granted and there's conditions with this, are we talking about the building commissioner being the sole person that's going to be handling all the complaints, if there are any, and making sure these conditions are followed?
Chris, do you want to answer that?
Sure. Well, that would be the case now. The building inspector is the zoning enforcement officer, whether it's an existing use, pre-existing non-conforming use, or a special permit use.
Okay. So I guess that, that's one of my my reflections about this is, if there are conditions with this, that we have one person that's going to be in charge of, a series of conditions. So I'm just mindful that, we have one person doing this, and we might be overloading this person if we have conditions that he might not be able to keep in check.
Yeah, that would be, the zoning enforcement officer would be in charge of a special permit from this board or from the zoning board of appeals, or compliance with a planning board permit. So whichever way this applicant had decided to go, eventually enforcement of any permit or zoning would be in the building inspector's hands first. So that's regardless of what happens here.
Anyone else?
I understand that the point was about staffing, but that's it. That's the way it will go.
Thank you.
Chris, 1 week from today, going to be enough time?
Well, I think you've asked the applicant for some information.
Yeah.
So I think it's up to them to, maybe they can provide that information within a week. I think this board and your staff may have a little bit more work ahead of us to begin to craft findings and conditions while we wait for more evidence.
So we will, Ed will continue, we'll ask for go ahead, Bill.
I have one other question. If we should deny this permit, would they still be able to go forward with the hangars by going through the planning board or the zoning board of appeals, or would that knock them out for 2 years?
I don't know, Bill. That's a complicated question. I'll try to answer that for you.
I had that same question.
Thank you, Chris. If you come back to us with that, that would be wonderful. Okay, so we will continue. Mr. Egan, I assume that 1 week from tonight, you'll be able to get us the majority of the answers or all the answers that we
Yes,
have?
we will be able to get you all the answers far before then, but certainly by 1 week, we'll have all these answers for you.
Okay. Ed, you want to go ahead with the motion?
That what we're continuing to then?
Yes.
Motion to continue the public hearing to, help me with the date. The
21st.
Or September 21st, 2020. Is it 21st?
Yes, it is.
I'll take your word for that.
At 6 p.m.
6 p.m.
I'll second.
Okay. Roll call vote. Lee,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
and I. We have citizen speak. There is one caveat here that our lawyer does not allow, per law, has discouraged us from having anyone speak about an active special permit. So, and I think there may be others, but obviously someone may want to speak about this. And because the public hearing has been continued, we will not take any comments about the airport for citizen speak. So anyone want to speak at this point? Seeing no one?
Oh, I see a hand up, Steve.
Yeah, it's Ellen House.
Ellen's has been up the whole time, so I assume she wants to talk about this. So Ellen, did you want to talk about anything but the airport? Just unmute yourself.
Sorry, we'll have to speak at the next hearing about the airport.
Thank you. So let's move ahead to select board time. Lee,
Nothing for me.
Kate,
I guess, I mean, it's not specifically related to town stuff. I do have a town thing. I do think that we need to start thinking about Halloween, as we are the ones that set the Halloween date. So I'm hoping that that can be added to an agenda, and maybe Mark can come with us with a couple of suggestions.
it will be done.
And him and I meet this week. I have a couple of ideas. And then today was the first day of remote learning for most of our schools. And I just really wanted to say in general that I appreciate all of the hard work that our schools and teachers have done. And I also ask that people remain patient with parents as we're really feeling the pandemic again, in ways that I think we kind of forgot. It's put a lot of stress on families, and just as for employers and friends and family and community to just keep that in mind as we go forward and figure all this out in the next few weeks. That's all.
Thank you, Kate. Bill?
Nothing here.
I'd actually forgot.
Lee, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted, Mark, maybe for the next meeting along with the Halloween meeting about the discussion about leash laws and maybe setting times that we would permit off-leash. So I just want to make sure that that's on an agenda. I know there's been...
Lee, I don't want to get into the discussion. We did receive a letter today that was public. We have no control over that property. So we may want to refer that to the Conservation Commission.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to make sure that was on the agenda.
No, I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
Ed?
Yeah, I just want the record to show if anything happens to Halloween, Kate brought it up.
And I have nothing more to add to that. Media time. And I'm not seeing anyone raise their hand. So I will assume we did such a good job there were no questions. And we will be adjourned by unanimous consent. Thank you, everyone.
See you tomorrow night.
Okay.